I heard of Medjugorje the first time in 1991 in the fall. I came in February or March of 1992 as a Protestant. I was studying to be a medical doctor. I was 28 years old and gone back to university. A friend of mine from Texas, also a Protestant, I was raised Protestant, saw the conversion of this other man, Jeff Reed, who runs St. David's Relief Foundation now. He saw a change in Jeff, and he said, literally, he went up to Jeff and said, "Jeff, what happened to you? I want it," because Jeff had this peace about him that Jeff had never had before. My friend Robert and I were at his ranch in Colorado and talking, and he said, "John, I don't know what to do about this, but I see this radical change in my friend Jeff," and he gave me this book on Medjugorje by Wayne Weibel. "Read it and tell me what you think." And so that's the first time I heard about it. We grew up together. We were best friends all our lives. We never talked religion. We chased girls together. We hunted together. We drank together. But we never talked religion together. We were even altar boys at the Episcopalian Church together, but never talked religion until he handed me that book. And he didn't know that at that moment I was asking the big questions at 28 years old. Why do I have such a big hole in my heart? Why do I have all the things the world promises and I'm on my way to medical school? Why do I feel so empty? And what's happening here? And when he handed me that book, wow, it was a great beginning. And we began to talk further about it. And he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "It's one of three things. It's either of the devil, they're crazy, or it's real." And I have a little bit of a military background. I was a naval officer in the reserves. And I said, militarily speaking, it can't be of the devil, because he would never tell us to go to his enemy by going to confession, by going to church, by praying the rosary, something I didn't know how to do. He would never tell us to do these things, so it can't be of him. There's 6 of these kids. How could they all be crazy? That doesn't make any sense either. So it must be real. And Robert looked at me and goes, "Dadgummit, I think you're right. That's what I thought too. We have to go." I was like, "Okay, let's go." I can't say that I came with expectations, because I really had no idea what to expect. I'd read this book by Wayne Weibel, and all I knew was, and it was a very strange time to come as well. It was early 1992, so it was like February, March of 1992, and Jeff Reed had said, "Okay, well, let's go." And but Father Svetozar is asking if we can bring some medical supplies along, because at that point in time he knew the war was coming. And so we, with Jeff and a group of Mexican charismatics from West Texas, all gathered a bunch of medical supplies and carried them in suitcases through Belgrade down to Sarajevo and into Medjugorje. And so basically we were smuggling. Not basically, we were smuggling, and it's an interesting story. We got caught, but my friend Robert and I saw the power of the rosary work that day, and though they had Robert thrown in a holding tank, ready to throw him in a jail, somehow that rosary worked. We saw these little abuelas, these little grandmothers from Mexico and Texas praying the rosary, and the guard's boss came down and saw this letter written in English with a stamp that was raised seal stamp, saying in English on the letterhead of veterinarian that we had permission to bring these medical supplies in. And she ran her finger over that stamp and then lifted her finger and yelled at her compatriot for holding us. That was the first introduction to the power of the rosary. I'm like, there's something to this. I don't know what it is. And then we came into Medjugorje after a couple of days and of other stories, but it was an amazing experience to see what the rosary does, to meet Our Lady, because as a Protestant we didn't know Our Lady, but we got to know her there, and then to meet Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament, because they had adoration going on. Though there weren't hardly, I think we were the only pilgrim group at all in town. There was still adoration, and Father Slavko was there, and Father Svetozar. And despite the fact that the threat of war was happening, it was a very peaceful place, and you could note the difference. Came on that first pilgrimage asking God what he wanted me to do with my life. I was on my way to medical school. I was back in university studying, but I realized I needed to ask God and quit telling him what I wanted to do, but ask him what he wanted to do. And there was a particular moment up on Podbrdo where I finally just kind of signed a blank check to Jesus and said, okay, Lord, I'll do whatever you want me to do. I'd even become, and I thought of the craziest thing I could think of, I'd even become a Franciscan in Bosnia. I don't know what they are. I don't know what they do. I just met one the other day. But I'd even do that if you wanted me to. And this peace descended upon me at that moment. I didn't think I was going to become a Franciscan. But in time, when I went back home after that pilgrimage, I began to realize through spiritual direction that it was indeed a real call to give my life completely over to the Lord. But I wasn't convinced of the Catholic Church yet. Well, the first struggle was realizing that being called to the Catholic Church, that I would have to give up my girlfriend if I was going to really be a priest. Before I was an Episcopalian, I would think, well, I can do both things. So this was a little bit more serious. But when I realized I needed to act on the truth, then I said, okay, that's what you want, Lord, let's go. And by God's grace, the Catholic Church in its wisdom doesn't allow a new convert to come in to any religious order or diocese for at least 2 years. And by God's providence and through Our Lady's hand, I spent most of that 2 years here in Medjugorje, running convoys during the war with the St. David's Relief Foundation. So I was under the tutelage of Father Svet and Father Slavko for almost 2 years here. So my first 2 years as a Catholic was spent in this parish. And it was a beautiful thing because I could see literally day by day, sometimes multiple times in a day, the fruits of heaven and hell side by side. We would leave this peaceful little envelope of Medjugorje and hit the borders of Mostar and go all the way up as far as Zenica and Tuzla and points in and around and beyond Sarajevo and see the fruits of hell, and then come back and see the fruits of heaven. And then I watched as the friars just operated through all this. One of my heroes, Father Leonard Orich, God rest his soul, I remember the day the Muslims and Croats had a peace treaty signed, and that day he called me up and said, John, load up all your trucks and get some more. We're going over to the east side of the Mostar to the Red Crescent, and we're going to give them supplies, and we're going to show them we're about peace. And I said, whew. And I remember standing in East Mostar with Father Leonard in his full brown habit, and this little boy grabbing my hand, because I was, a civilian, going, this guy's crazy. There's snipers around here all over the place, and he's in a habit? I'm like, and it dawned on me, this is what friars are about. And so this really formed me greatly, to see that spirituality. I had no idea what religious life was supposed to be about from the inside. I had no concept of any of it. But I just knew in my heart that I was called to be a friar. I was invited to join the province here, and I was honored by that invitation, but I also knew in my heart somehow that I was called back to the United States. I had no idea where. So Father Svet mentioned this bunch, and as the war began to wane and dwindle down near the beginning of '95, we knew we were going to pull out. There was no need for us to be here anymore. And I said, Father, where do I go? I know I'm not called to stay here. He says, why don't you look at this little strange bunch of friars in the Bronx? And so that's how I was introduced to the community I now belong to. Anytime anybody says yes to Jesus through Our Lady, it breaks open a space for God to be able to act in their hearts and to move. My theory, which is not so humble because I'm not so humble, But my theory is that Medjugorje has a charism that is simply that Our Lady is giving marching orders for her troops and placing them around the world to be able to do what God wants to do and be lights of the love of Jesus Christ in a very dark time. And she's playing chess, and she invites people, and she gives them a job, and that person can open their heart to that or not. And when they do, great things happen. A Dominican priest I know, Father Giles Dimmock from the United States, once said about Medjugorje, he said, and this was maybe 20 years ago, he said this to me, 15. He said, you know, Medjugorje is got an interesting thing. 80% of the people that are active in the parishes, they've all been touched by Medjugorje. He said, and they also have another thing that's interesting. They seem to be scandal-proof. They seem not to be devastated when they encounter the humanity in Jesus' church. Boy, isn't that what we need in these times? People who work and people who can weather a storm. That's what I see. I've seen it in so many different ways. I could give so many different anecdotes of how it's happened, but that's what I see as the particular graces of Medjugorje. Everybody needs to work on applying their faith. You know, we're not given the gift of faith. We're not given the tools of faith. The various things Our Lady invites us to do: the Rosary, the Confession, the living the Eucharist, reading the Scriptures, fasting. We're not asked to do these things and to say, "Oh, look what I do," and hang. You know, it's like hanging a trophy on the wall. Look at this, isn't it nice? You know what I do. No, they're tools. They're weapons. We're intended to use these things and to go into the spiritual fight and to fight. And if anybody looks around and sees what's going on in the world right now and thinks there's not a fight, they've got their eyes closed and their ears shut. We need to be active. We need to get out there. We need to proclaim the truth in love. The things that Our Lady invites us to do, these 5 stones, as Father Yozo famously speaks of, they're tools with one goal in mind: to make space for Jesus Christ to be put into the first place in our hearts, so that we individually can, whatever way that the Holy Spirit inspires us to do, go out and bring that light of Christ to other people. It's for no other reason. If not, it's burying the talent in the soil and doing nothing with the gift that God has given us. We have to be active. As an individual, coming home, getting a hug from Mama is always much appreciated and needed. Coming back to the home base where it all started and remembering, right? We need to remember where God brought us from to hang on. But then as a priest, you know, as a layman coming to Medjugorje, going to confession is always so powerful. Now being on the other side of the confessional and being able to participate in that intimate way of Jesus's work in the soul after soul, it's humbling, it's mind-blowing, it's energizing, it's an amazing thing to see people. A lot of big fish, as they say. You know, the little fish are the ones that go to confession every week or two. The big fish are the ones that have been away for 50 years. You know, so a lot of big fish coming here. You know, and what is that? It's that grace of conversion that's being pumped out over here in torrents. It's beautiful. So as a priest, it's energizing, and it gives you hope. You see so many young people coming and giving their lives over to the Lord, and hopefully signing a blank check and saying, "Do with me what you will," and obviously letting Our Lady co-sign that check, because none of us have enough in the bank account. But giving everything over to the Lord. So I see that as I talk to young people, and then the veterans who've been here many times, you know. And it's not just a vocation to religious life, it's secondary vocations. Seeing, as a priest, hearing people ask, how can I go back to my parish and get active? What can I do back home? They confide all that. And so, again, it confirms what what I've seen the charism of Medjugorje to be is Our Lady's giving marching orders to her troops on every level, sending them out